You have no idea how difficult it was to not interrupt you every time you stumbled. I just want you to appreciate the self-restraint that I had there. So
I know. I mean, your inner asshole was really trying to come through, and I appreciate you for holding that back.
It really was. It really was.
Yeah. Welcome to Preferred Enemies, the Warhammer 40k podcast that wonders if pain really is weakness leaving the body. I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin.
Dennis.
And Richard.
And this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about pain. Specifically, what are the pain points that people have been having in adjusting to 11th edition? Where are we seeing the biggest friction in the game, and what can possibly be done about it? But before we get into that topic, we have two hosts who were recently at GenCon. Kevin and Richard, how'd it go this year? You guys are regulars. You go pretty much every year.
I have the con crud to prove that I was there. So that's
and did you take the tornado back to Kansas, or did you drive?
So yeah,
that was a fun little twist when somebody's like, "Oh yeah, by the way."
Yeah, so for the first time in the 15, 16 years that I've gone to Gen Con, we actually had a live active tornado warning on Saturday night. Richard and I were both on the field at Lucas Oil Stadium playing, Tunnels and Trolls, I believe?
Yeah.
When they came over the PA and they were like, hey, there's a tornado warning, which is, we have sighted a tornado. Get to storm shelter now. It wasn't like, please, move away from the windows. It was like, get inside now. And everyone's like, okay, get up, move in there. We were in the stadium. So the stadium is obviously very well built. So there's a big storm shelter, but it is hard for me to imagine being in a worse place for a tornado than on the field in a dome stadium. Because if there was a tornado, the roof would have just gotten ripped completely off the building. And there was a giant wall of glass because it's a dome stadium and it's gotta let the light in and stuff. So I was like, yeah, we should get off the field. About 30 minutes and then it was fine. I don't think a tornado ever actually touched down in downtown, but they did have they did see funnel clouds and they did see some swirling action. So they were like, you know what, better safe than sorry. The wind and the rain did damage the convention center, and apparently I think it was the Warlord games section where they were playing games, a pipe burst and just dumped rainwater all over those tables. So I felt really bad for those people. And I know some vendors lost some merch, some stuff as well, and had some water damage. And apparently the storm shelter area in the convention center had a pipe burst as well and was flooding at the same time. So people weren't using it for the storm shelter, obviously.
Yeah, as I said on our Patreon chat, as the last thing I want to be asking in a tornado is, can you swim?
Yeah, it's not great. Not great.
No.
But for us, it was like I said, we were probably in the best position because I wasn't worried about the stadium being damaged. I was worried about being on the field, in the big open area with all of the loose flying objects. Yeah, we went into the storm shelter for 30 minutes and then back out. It was really funny because you could tell who was Midwest and who wasn't by who was freaking out about the storm and then who was just casually scrolling their phone going, yeah, it'll be over in 20 minutes.
Yeah, we've just kind of become jaded about the whole thing, haven't we?
Yeah, it really isn't a thing. It's it'll hit us or it won't.
Now, the difference between people from the Midwest and people from the South is people from the South would be going outside to record it on camera.
I mean, look, I may or may not have done that in a previous tornado.
You may be officially, unofficially from the South. Well, then
I'll say this: I didn't record it because it was the mid '90s and I didn't have the ability to record it. That's the only reason why I don't have video.
Fair.
But yeah, it was that was an experience for sure. Overall, though, the convention was really great. Every year, have a blast. I actually got to do. I think I did this last year. We talked about it last year as well, but. I got to do the 40K Kill Team Live laser tag this year, which was always really fun. They basically set up a conference room and they set up a bunch of obstacles and laser tag points, and then basically split you up into two teams. There was a guard team and there was an orc kill team. The orc team had like heavy shooters that fired at like slow, consistent rate, and then the guard ones had las guns that had like variable fire modes and stuff like that, so you could fire weaker shots more frequently, or you could like slower shots, things like that. It was a lot of fun. We ended up, I think they said at the end of the 30 minutes, the orc team that I was on lost, but I think we lost by holding a total of like 20 seconds from like holding the total command zones. So they were like, that is easily the closest game we'd had the entire time. But
nice.
I ended up also like, it was really funny because when you're at conventions, I am at least aware of, body odor and, stuff like that, like showering regularly, because a lot of people at those conventions are not. So I did that, and I did that, and I think it was like 11 or like noon when it ended. And I walked back out on the convention floor. It's like, this, and it wasn't until I was done that I just realized as soon as I was like done, like, running around carrying all this stuff like that I was just like starting like covered in sweat. So I had to go back to the hotel and like take a shower in the middle of the day. Cause I'm like, I'm not going to be that guy walking around the convention for the next hour.
Hey, Mother Nature tried to make sure everyone showered.
Yeah, tried.
Telling you, that monkey paw is all middle fingers.
It really is. There was some other cool stuff, like some other interesting things that I ran into. There was a company called Impact Miniatures, and Richard will have more hands-on experience with this, but they make a bunch of really cool, really fun miniatures, including like little chibis of pop culture things. So there was like a Big Trouble in Little China set, and granted, these are all like not official names, but there was a set that was Big Trouble in Little China. There was a Mass Effect set. There was Labyrinth, all the characters from Labyrinth. There was a 40K set that had like Sisters of Battle and a Commissar and an Inquisitor, and then I think like 4 Chaos Space Marines. Just really cool stuff. But Impact Miniatures, really fun, like small company that makes really cool miniatures. Then
last year they were the one that had like the little Chaos hippo. I'm pretty sure they were the ones that made that.
Okay,
if I remember correctly. And then they also have a series that they did that was called Food Fight.
Yes.
Yes, which I got a couple of those through the paint and take. And they're all just like kind of D&D like flavored, classes, but instead of being regular people, their heads are food. So like the two that I ended up getting was like a little taco rogue and a donut wizard.
Yeah, the donut wizard is particularly amazing.
Yeah. And so and I looked it up, and they've got other things like a burger standard bearer, and they're pretty funny. Yeah, fun stuff. The other company that I visit every year that's relevant to our purposes is Lethal Shadows, another miniatures company, and they make the really awesome like paint figure holder like for painting. That's like $80. That's like the best painting handle that I've ever used because it's amazing, but it's also super expensive. But they also have a bunch of like resin models that they make, and at the convention they do two things that I think is really cool. They have like basically miniature slot machines, where you basically buy tokens and then you put them into the slot machines and you get like a random figure out, which is really fun at a convention to like feed people's gambling addictions. And then they also have the basically a box of like miscast models, I think is what they call it, but it's like $40 and it's a pound of model. Yeah, imperfect bits is what
imperfect bits is what it's called. Yeah. So Richard and I both picked one up because why not? I don't have enough miniatures.
Yeah. I had gotten one last year and really liked the stuff that I had gotten out of it. And so, I was like, definitely, again, get one this year. I might even get like 2 next year.
Well, it was interesting too, because and I wasn't expecting this when I asked, I was like, oh yeah, I saw the box of imperfect bits, can I get one? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. PG-13 or R-rated. And I'm like,
yeah.
I'm going to go PG-13, but next year, maybe not. I was like, but yeah, apparently they have some more adult themed models as well.
Yeah, that's kind of new this year. That was new this year. I don't recall them having that last year.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool to see the GW people there. They had the Warhammer booth. Chris was there doing demos. Rachel and Katie and Sergeant Steele were there doing like the paint and takes, the painting demos. I didn't run into Zach this year, but I ran into like everybody else that we know from games from the GW stuff. So
very cool. So good time had by all, despite the storm.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess despite the tornado.
Despite the tornado.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Cool. God, I haven't been to GenCon since 99. It's been a while for me. Last time I went, there was still Milwaukee.
Not even this century. Jesus.
No, not even this century.
Last century. Oh my God.
I have Rob beat. I've never been to Gen Con.
It's fun. It's a fun event.
I know. I still need to go to Nova. I still need to go to. There's a lot of ones I still need to go to.
And like,
it's finding time.
On top of that, like I did a lot of miniature stuff this year, but also like I spent twice or three times as much time like doing RPG stuff. So, I played the old D6 Star Wars West End game. I played Mythcraft, Tunnels and Trolls, Marvel Superhero Multiverse game. Like, just had got into a Shadow Dart game. Bought a bunch of like Mothership stuff, and hopefully I'll get to play it next year. So yeah, it's always a lot of fun.
Very cool. Well, now it's time to talk about stuff that may not be as much fun.
Sure, we'll make it fun.
Will we? Will we? I'm not. Yeah, we might, possibly. So I went through the extremely scientific process of asking around my local game group, our Patreon patrons, and also scouring Reddit Warhammer communities for, especially on the topic of what are the things that are working for 11th edition and what aren't. Like, where are things not exactly gelling? I don't want to get into particular armies too much because there's a lot of opinions back and forth. Some people are very happy with how their armies are playing because their particular build plays really well. Some people are not happy with how their armies are playing. They're definitely like win rates are still kind of crystallizing. We are a month into the edition, so I imagine we're still going to see a lot of flux there. We don't have our first codex yet. We don't know exactly when. We know it's supposed to be in a few weeks is when we get orcs, but we don't know much about that. We don't know what the codex will contain, what the format is exactly going to be. So it's a bit early to go from looking at a very particular army level. Points are still kind of wonky in a few spots. Things are getting better from what I understand. So like I said, I didn't want to focus so much on individual armies, although some armies are affected by a couple of these things we are going to talk about more than others. But the three biggest pain points that have come up, and this is also backed up in a couple of cases by a lot of event data that's been collected. The three things that we noticed coming up the most. First off, and this is probably the smallest of the three because this is a bit more specific based on what armies you're taking, although again, this affects a wide swath of armies, is how hazardous works. The hazardous has been made more common to trigger by literally twice as much in 11th edition, but it's also been changed to not be instant death for infantry models, but instead, but instead it just does a mortal wound. Unless you're a monster vehicle unit takes 3 mortal wounds. And I think for vehicles and monsters, I feel like it hits about the right spot. Like that three wounds, it makes it, a lot of risk reward. I've definitely lost some wounds from hazardous checks on vehicles, but it does make you decide, am I going to overcharge this weapon? Am I going to fire in the more hazardous mode?
As
maybe so.
Someone who has like a plasma gun on a Redemptor Dread for Dark Angels, it felt like hazardous came up more often, and I was wounding myself more than my opponent was with that. So I agree. I feel like it's in the right spot, but it does make, at least for what you said, for monsters and vehicles, hazardous does feel hazardous, not just an auto do.
Right. And I think that's where it should be. I think for vehicles, I do feel like if you want to push it, you have to know you're probably going to be paying for it. That I think is fine. Where hazardous starts to fall down and is far more painful is with armies that are primarily one wound units. We're looking at guard. Like guard are probably the biggest one, but also any army that depends on transports, because the other thing is the emergency deembarkation that has been changed to do hazardous checks. Like if the vehicle is destroyed and you have to get out, you have to make hazardous checks. That means that in the past, where it was only triggering on ones and would just do a mortal wound, you could easily lose a transport and maybe only lose one person from inside. There have been plenty of times where I didn't lose anybody. Mm. However, in the new edition, now that triggers twice as much, armies that are dependent on transports to get fragile troops from one point to another, often to provide some sort of buff, either the vehicle provides a buff or it's just the fastest way to get in place, that can be an active threat now, because you're looking at losing a third of your units, because those one wound units, well, they take one wound, they're gone. Like the models are gone. So that has changed the metrics. It's kind of changed the calculus on using vehicles to where a lot of people are trying not to use transports for those armies. And
I also think it depends on the transport itself, because I know some examples people gave were like Dark Eldar and Harlequins. Those are some of the most fragile transports in the game.
Right.
And like Banshees, I've seen people more use Banshees and Scorpions have infiltrate, but Banshees more outside of the transports. And it's weird that Banshees feel more durable than like Witches. But you also have the Wave Serpent being more durable than the Raiders, which, and as you were alluding to, the Witches need to get into close combat. And so you want to get them there as safely as possible. And if I have a squad of 10 or 11 with a Succubus, I'm losing 3 or 4 if it blows up. And that just, small squads don't do as well there. So I can see that problem. And I've also seen the other side of it, where in our past game this past weekend, we destroyed a Tau Tidewall that had a bunch of Tau in it, and he rolled poorly, and he lost half the squad due to the hazardous roll.
Mm-hmm.
I was very thankful for that, but it was a surprise to him because it's new. It's a new rule that we've got to adjust for, and some armies can adjust easier and better than others. But yeah, and I see transports for like Guard as at least more durable than like Venoms and Raiders for like the Dark Eldar.
I definitely would agree with that, but even Guard players are trying to avoid transports at this point if they can. And you have the extra double whammy of Deadly Demise takes place explicitly after doing those emergency disembark moves. Like, it is actually in the Deadly Demise rule. So it used to be in 10th edition, the unit that popped out of the transport didn't suffer the effects of Deadly Demise, but they've changed that. So now you might lose like a third to half of your units from getting out of the destroyed vehicle, and then on top of that, take additional wounds if you roll a 6 on the vehicle exploding, which that is a brutal effect. And again, this is mostly something that affects one wound troop armies. Space Marines?
No.
Yeah. They just kind of, they might lose a guy.
They shall know no paper cuts.
Right.
The only thing I could think of around this, and this is going to be, just try to use your transports as I'm getting upfield quickly, or I need to be where they go quickly and disembarking. And to make it safer for them, have a higher target priority for your opponents to have to deal with while you do that. I mean, that's the only way I think you can get around this right now.
Mm-hmm. But this affects any of those detachments where you get benefits for like, oh, you just disembarked from a transport, because you don't want to be in a transport. You don't want to be near a transport. So there are certain detachments where it's like you are actively punished. As you said, Des, a lot of times those are the more fragile transports too. Like, Drukhari specifically have, is it the Sky Splinter? Yeah, Sky Splinter Assault, where every time a Drukhari unit from your army disembarks from a transport, they gain Ignore Cover and Lance. Ignore Cover, really good in this edition. That'd be fantastic. Melee weapons get Lance. Also really good for Drukhari, who are a Strength 3 army. That is a whole bunch of bombs waiting to happen.
Yeah, what's the worst that could happen?
Your vehicles blow up and you lose half your army.
Oh, I was thinking worse. I was thinking the worst that could happen is people stop playing Dark Eldar like they did when they didn't have a codex since 2nd edition.
Anyone who plays Eldar gets what they deserve.
Says the person who's going to dip their toes into Exodites.
No, I mean, not anytime soon because I can't find any.
Okay, fair.
Fair.
But yeah. No, I agree that it definitely is a problem.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this one, it's because the way the rules, it's explicitly spelled out in the rules that this is the order of operations, this is how it works, without some sort of errata other than just don't use transports. There's not really a good workaround.
The only workaround I can think of is the one I mentioned, or patching the codex / units.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which
that's probably what ultimately
mess
happened.
of issues.
Because, Eldar probably have good shield technology that if something goes awry, they can, shield their peoples.
Drukhari would not care.
Yeah, Drukhari, feel no pain against it, maybe. But that's still...
Yeah.
Not a guarantee.
And it's feel no pain against hazardous checks specifically, because you don't want that to spill into avoiding other mortals. So, yeah, it's that one, It is a pain point, and we'll have to wait and see what happens as codexes come out. Maybe people will have made enough of an issue of this. Maybe Games Workshop will notice. We still have 2 more monthly updates to go before the first quarter is over. So hopefully in a couple of weeks, we should get the August update, and maybe they will take a look into this. The tricky part is that the rules on emergency disembark and deadly demise, these are in the core rules, and I think they're going to be very reluctant.
Oh, I don't see them changing those. Like I said,
No.
I think they might change on a unit by unit basis.
Yeah, but that's going to be very clunky. There's not an elegant fix to this, I should say.
No, but I'll knock on wood with an idea I just thought of is we've got 3 balanced slates, and then Codex will come out after that sometime.
Possibly. That we'll have. Well, which Codex? The Orcs
one? Yeah, because they're first. Aren't they?
I don't think we'll make it all the way to September. I think they'll probably because we're talking late September for the third.
Okay,
the first one was late July.
Where I was going with this is maybe after they get to that third one will be a patch to everything where they said, okay, we didn't want to patch everything now. We wanted to see how it goes. And now here's after our observations, here's the first codex. Here's all the patch things. You guys should be good until the next balanced data slater codex. That's my thought. We'll see if it happens.
It's so, I like the optimistic way of thinking. But yeah, that one's just going to be a difficult issue. It is going, but it short of a couple of armies or detachments, you can generally play around this by just not using transports much, and otherwise.
Rob says that, and I look at my Voton army that has a Capricus, a Sagittar, and a land fortress.
Buy more models, man.
No, I like my transports.
Well, I don't know what to tell you, sir.
I'm just going to go with it. Dwarves are
just
sturdy, right?
Right.
Yeah, sure.
So that takes us to our second pain point. And this one is going to be a little bit more of a discussion, I think. Hazardous was a relatively simple one to discuss. The second one is terrain. And definitely there have been multiple issues with terrain, both in how it's set up, how it's being used, and how that adjusts to people who already have existing terrain collections, how the balance of terrain works out, how the rules of terrain work out. So first off, we've mentioned it before, but it is still a huge issue. is the setup time involved for terrain, especially if you are using the matched play layouts.
We've done it multiple times now, and it still takes about 15 to 20 minutes to get a table set up. I still think it can get, I'll say faster, but maybe down to 10 to 15 minutes if you and your opponent both teamwork it together and get it done. And I just think this is an adjustment period. I feel like this is the direction we're going. Terrain instead of... Well, also, Rob, do you remember way, way, way back in the day where they said just set all the terrain in a corner and then you and your opponent each select one piece of terrain and put it on the board?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of similar to that, except the board's already kind of chosen for you. You just have to measure it out. So instead of doing the deliberate choices of where do I put this, where do I put this, and then it moved into, well, here's some standard formats, and then it moved to, well, here's the standard formats that all the tables are going to be. So I think this is just going to be an adjustment period where we have to adjust to the new style, and it's going to be painful for the next few months until it becomes common.
Right. And I think that the only ways I've seen to accelerate it, the fastest setup I have seen that I have taken part in, and this is not a paid sponsorship or anything, but I am going to point this out because while we have like frontline gaming mats at the store, one of my players had ordered stuff so that they had a setup at home. And so they brought in their battle mat, which was from Lighter Creative. And the thing that was really nice about the Lighter Creative map is that it had all the deployment zones marked out. It had like the halfway points for like the various diagonal setups marked out. But most importantly, it's gridded out in 1-inch squares with numbers along the side at the outer edge going like 5, 10, 15, 20. That made it very easy to look at the terrain layout, say, okay, this piece is like, this corner is 10 inches in and 15 inches up. Boom. You could just go 5, 10 right there, 5, 10, 15 here. Boom, set it up. Like all the measurements were really easy to mark out because you didn't have to get out a tape measure. You could just you could eyeball it with the grid. That we probably had set up in less than 10 minutes.
Wow.
That's what's required. Now, I will say the Lighter Creative mats are not neoprene. They're like rubberized vinyl. Like they've got a no slip bottom and they're like vinyl on top. I don't like how they feel as much as the neoprene, but
and other than the grid, how does it look? Does it look like a terrain board, like grass or craters or city?
I'm going to send a link to the chat so you can take a look, and I'll post a link to the show notes. Again, remember, this is not sponsored. I don't own any Lighter Creative stuff. I haven't bought any. They haven't sent us anything. This is just my experience playing with a mat that somebody brought.
But if they do want to send us stuff.
You mentioned two things also, Rob, about going to a local game store. Local game stores, at least here, don't have this terrain. They might have like a set, but like even our friendly local game store, he has some wood cut MDF like bases he's put out for sale and is one for the store to use. So it feels like it's easier to just kind of bring your own if you have it, because the stores might not. I mean, this store has like 16 tables. He doesn't have 16 sets of terrain. So in a way, it's kind of a reset button on terrain. But to the other point, if you don't have like the frontline gaming, as I talked in our original one, I still had some of our old, we sat around a microphone and put together building terrain from years ago. And it works just fine. It's not the standard, I guess, tournament ones, but I mean, it provides the cover, it provides line of sight blocking, and I think it works. So, as I said, I just also used a knight I laid down on its side as part of the wall for one of them because I didn't have enough normals. So you can still kind of get creative with it as long as you don't like overshadow the terrain base, I guess, because the bases are what's the most important.
Right. And I think that one issue is that a lot of stores, if they do have terrain, like our store, we have terrain. We had, when the store first opened up, 10th edition was really just underway. And I worked with the store to purchase like 2 or 3 sets of terrain to use. And then the store bought another set of terrain from a vendor, all like MDF, like laser cut wood or MDF, had assembly parties, got it all together. And it worked really well. We didn't have like bases for a lot of it. Some of the pieces didn't have bases, but we were able to work around that. And those pieces, for the most part, fit on the standardized terrain areas that 11th edition has. But like once you get past the few large pieces, you start having trouble finding terrain that fits the smaller bases. Also, a lot of stores, if they were 10th edition focused, where there was ruins, and that was really the only thing that mattered. And so we have a lot of like L-shaped walls or things like that. There's not much light terrain, like little wall segments or pipelines or things like that. And again, if you are using the match play maps, some of those are kind of fundamental to those layouts.
That's why I guess I'm fortunate for being an old person playing. I have orc partitions. I have Aegis defense lines. Those are perfect for those smaller sections.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's just, most people don't have those recent.
Yeah, I have like Mechanicus pipes. And
right. Also perfect.
But I have them here at home. I have brought them up to use, and they look really nice. They work really well. And I've got like the plasma generators, and those work really well in place of the new like combat zone battlescape terrain that they have, which they don't, the full color stuff is not out yet, but I did see like the combat patrol size terrain set is available. I saw a set of it at Peculiar Game and Hobby. I was there yesterday, and that was on the shelf. So that is out and available. But yeah, if you don't have that lighter kind of scatter terrain, which again, a lot of places didn't, because it wasn't viable. It didn't matter for 10th edition. I like that it is usable. I like that it is encouraged to use, but not a lot of people have it. And so that can also be an issue. Or if you have larger, more unwieldy pieces of terrain, some of the older Mechanicus terrain or the landing pads, things like that, those don't necessarily fit even on like, they might barely fit on if you put the two triangle pieces together to make one large piece.
No, it's just a display piece now.
Yeah. But also, if you are running a table layout, again, assuming you're using the match play layouts, and even in narrative play, we've been kind of leaning to that because it's the guideline we have. And it's like, well, that's kind of what the dispositions are tailored to. We'll talk more about those later. That, now that we don't have a single large centerpiece, that piece has been split into two triangle halves. Well, now I don't have anything that'll fit in those areas, or I'm running out of options to fit in those areas. Yeah, so having terrain in your collection, that like the adjustment there is just to get more terrain. And a lot of the newer GW sets that they've released have those smaller wall segments or pipes or scattered terrain, and scattered terrain is definitely out there to get. It's not difficult to get, it's just a lot of people don't have it.
Right. I will toss this out as a bit for a visibility thing. I'm weird. I actually watch Warhammer 40k streams when people stream GTs and whatnot at home, and this edition is more visible. I can actually, the way the terrain is, you can kind of see through it or over it a lot easier now, because the air quote tall buildings are not as tall as they were in 10th.
No, they're not.
Because it's not like giant. So that makes you being able, as a player, being able to see the board easier, or as a watcher, being able to see the board easier. And by not having the like fully enclosed buildings either, you don't have units that go somewhere, then they get lost and people forget about them, or your opponent can't see them. So from a viewing perspective, from both either like a player to remember where all my units are, or from a watcher who's just watching it on a screen, it makes it easier to kind of see what's going on, because not everything is hidden by giant, tall 2-3 story buildings.
True. I do find, and I was noticing this in 10th edition when people were mass producing terrain, and we have some of this mass produced terrain for Midwest Conquest as well. The ruins have gotten a lot shorter because it was a lot faster to print and put together, and very easy to standardize. but it does leave a feeling like I'm fighting some weird, like, grimdark suburb rather than in a cityscape.
I mean, isn't that the most grimdark place to fight in the
In a
suburbs?
We're rocking the suburbs here. I do miss some of the spectacle of larger terrain, but definitely is easier to use. I also don't miss, trying to avoid putting my eye out on some of the spires on old GW buildings.
Yeah.
When you like lean down for line of sight. So that is an issue with the terrain of like, just try to work with the terrain you have, like try to figure out how to make the layouts work. I think also, I hate to say this, and part of this is because the layouts are being used actively as a balancing feature, at least by Games Workshop. And again, we'll talk more about dispositions later and how those interact. But I kind of feel like with 11th, there hasn't been as much push for using your own terrain layouts. It seems like people, like the app, again, for game tracking, actively support, like pushes you into using, like, here's your 3 layouts or your 4 layouts or however many layouts your particular pairing has. Like, here's the layouts you have to be available. Tabletop Battles app does the same thing, the one that the studio formerly known as Goonhammer has put out. There's another one I found called GD Missions, has the same maps listed. And again, I think all of those are being geared more towards matched play, and there's a big discussion. We talked about it when we talked Dominatus last episode about how there's not enough app support for that. But this episode, I do not want to bring up the app any more than I have to. I think I've litigated that subject in the last episode, and I'm sure it'll come up in future episodes. But right now, I think the app is not so much the issue here as this is kind of being presented as, this is the layout. These are the layouts you use. This is what the game is meant to be played in. And we mentioned this last time, like the chapter approved deployment zone cards. Does anyone use those? Anyone? The ones that have no terrain layouts on them?
Yeah, no.
It's like they're kind of there. They're kind of pointless. They mark where the objectives are supposed to be. This actually got me into a little bit of a discussion with somebody on our Blue Sky about converting older missions to use with 11th edition. And he was like, yeah, you can just use the missions as is, because the rules do have a spot that mentions how to use objectives that aren't in a terrain piece. And it basically falls back to the old 3-inch circle or 3-inch radius circle rules.
Or pick it up and run with a relic.
Right. And so I said, that's great. But if you read the core rules, and one of the issues with that rule about where objectives are placed is that it is in the app. It is not in the core rules. It's kind of one of their addenda to the core rules. But the rules also state, if a mission uses objectives, this is actually, I'm reading straight from 14.01 terrain objectives. If a mission uses objectives, it will state where they are located on the battlefield. Typically, your mission will have a deployment map showing several points where objectives should be placed. The location of each point should coincide with a terrain area. That terrain area is the objective and is called a terrain objective. So even though it's like, well, you don't have to put the objectives on pieces of terrain, the rules specifically state if the map says where your objectives are, you put terrain on the objectives.
Right. And you could still do that, but like you said, the terrain has to be the objectives, but then you'd just be filling out the rest of the board with terrain to make it balanced.
Ish. Yeah.
I
think that's another little bit of a disconnect, is you do have to have terrain placed in certain spots. You want to use the larger pieces of terrain if you can, so there's room for bodies to get in and hold it. Because like you don't want to use the smaller pieces of terrain where it's like, oh, it's an objective, but it's also the one where, boom, I put a shipping container in, so there's hardly anywhere to stand on it. You want to make sure it's a piece of terrain that has enough cover due to pieces of preferably dense terrain. Light terrain will work in a pinch. I do think it's interesting that both light and dense terrain are infinitely tall as far as the rules go, that you can have a small pipeline, and if an Imperial Knight is behind it, you can't see it.
Cloaking tech is amazing in the Imperium.
And granted, that technically is an issue with 10th edition as well, because only aircraft ended up having like true line of sight. Although towering units could tow into to terrain and see out of it, unlike any other any other unit that couldn't be wholly within. That is something else that the terrain line of sight rules have gotten a bit weird with towing in. I think that is a bit of an issue because it's very easy for a very deadly unit to just tow that is not towering. Like, for example, a defiler to tow into a piece of terrain in the middle of the board, and especially if the terrain is lower than the height of the defiler, which is a relatively tall model, and just be able to see everywhere. That is something that's been brought up numerous times on this is kind of an issue. It's not great.
Well, everyone can see it too.
Everyone can see it, and it may or may not have cover depending on how
much is
obscured it
by
is
the building.
by what terrain you actually have on the piece. So the game balance is like, terrain is such an important part of game balance in this edition that you have to get it right when doing layouts. And I think there's just not enough outside of the matched play maps. There's just not enough good examples of proper layouts.
And I think that might come with time. Like maybe if they make I don't want to say a crusade book, but a war ground book or a battlefield book where they have a more narrative thing, maybe they'll put more terrain layouts in that. Question mark?
I've got the solution for it though. Like the solution is to buy the official GW terrain that fits the terrain features and it works with everything, so that if you play the game, you have to buy like the specific terrain and you can't make your own. Then everything is equal and balanced.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair and balanced.
We are not paid by Games Workshop, by the way. Kevin might be. I don't know. He might be on the take.
No,
on the
like
table,
that's exactly but like that's the only way to like ensure is to make sure that if you give GW money for your terrain, then everything will be perfectly balanced as all other GW things are. So yes.
I see sarcasm. Very well done.
Except for the models that aren't perfectly balanced because they tend to like lean a one way or the other because they try and defy gravity with them.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. No, it definitely is a concern, but I think to a large part this is all stuff that will get figured out or will get adjusted for in the edition and can be, rebalanced and tweaked with FAQs and balances and stuff going forward. So,
definitely. Again, I want to be clear about this episode. It's like these are not game breakers. These are not things that make the game unplayable. We're not looking at this and saying like, if they don't fix terrain, this game's dead. No, it's not that at all. What points are causing the most friction for the game?
No, and I think the part with terrain that's going to continue to cause the most friction going forward is just the setup, and like the actual like changing it between games. I think the rules themselves people will adjust to eventually.
Yeah. No, people will get used to the rules. Rules will get refined. If the tow-in rule ends up being an issue, maybe they do end up issuing an errata and changing up the rules. Because while there may be print rule books out there and they'll have the PDF of the core rules, they'll come up with a balance state. Like they added pivot rules in the last edition, which are also gone, by the way. That's not a thing anymore.
No, the pivot rule's still there. It just now works like it did before they added the pivot rule.
So no pivot rule.
Pivot is dead. Long live pivot. No. May we never speak of it again.
Yeah.
Pivot.
Oh.
I think the game using layout as a balancing feature, I'm a bit concerned about that too, because it's like the issue I don't know how much of the issue is, well, this terrain layout isn't as conducive to proper gameplay for this particular matchup as much as it is. Maybe that just means the missions themselves need to be updated. Like there's an issue more with how you score rather than where you score. Because I would think that the two missions that you are playing, against each other should work so long as you have objectives in the right spots. Not that, okay, well, we have to have these exact diagonal places or pieces arranged so, and the table has to be 100% symmetrical. As much as I love symmetrical setups so that no one player has an advantage, that's a little bit harder to pull off when you have two players doing very different things to win. But I'd love the game to be able to handle more flexibility of terrain layouts. I'd also like to see the people who have terrain that has pre-existing bases that don't match the official sizes should still be able to work. Like, we have a number of ruined building corners that do have bases, and they're all like half triangles, and none of them are the right size for GW terrain pieces. And like, unless you want to set them, and even if you set them like on top of the existing bases, they're gonna like spill over a little bit. It's like, just remember, like, the base is a base. That counts as the objective base. It doesn't have to be the official GW sized one.
I mean, to be fair, that's what I did exactly. Like, I have some square pieces. They don't cover the full thing. I just say that square part's part of the triangle thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if it hangs over, like some that don't have bases, well, here's an inch that hangs over here. Well, that's just an extra intervening wall, but the base is down here. So I think you can make it work, but it will take a little finagling.
Right, yeah. And you also have the weirdness of the GW terrains have these little like bumps that push out of the exact sides, and that is still technically part of the terrain base. Like, that is the terrain area. So if you have a table where you have like, because I saw like early on people were given the measurements and like, oh, we're just going to cut that straight lines all the way. It would make it super easy to cut. We can get those sets out. It's like, yeah, but now those terrain pieces don't have as much toe-in space as official GW terrain pieces. And I think the thing to remember is it's all terrain area. You need to be able to work with that. And I think, again, for match play, do your best. For tournament play, obviously you want to be as precise as possible. And that's just one of these areas where no matter how much Games Workshop wants narrative and match play to be like one and the same, the pressures and needs of each environment are different. And so whereas at a tournament setting, you want that terrain to be as precisely placed and balanced and equal as possible, because you don't want one side having an advantage because, oh, well, the terrain was better on one side of the table than the other. It should suck equally for everyone, basically. Like, there should be open firing lanes for everyone. Some of the layouts do have some pretty clear firing lanes. That is also an issue. But again, that is something that can be updated with time by updating the official terrain layouts, which are not in the core rules. They are in a tournament addendum. They're in the app. They could easily be updated. Like, that's not a problem. They can rearrange those and try to fix some of those gaps. But like for casual play or narrative play, the precision of the terrain shouldn't matter as much. It should matter more making an interesting table that's still relatively balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the part where I think as long as we remember that it needs to be relatively balanced for anything outside of a tournament, it doesn't have to be equal. That is something that as players we can do completely separate from Games Workshop, is just remembering, hey, terrain is terrain. It's play around with it. It's a part of the game. It is, the terrain layouts are not sacrosanct. Like, you can mess with them. You can do whatever you want. If you want to use your deployment cards from Chapter Approved, just, get it vaguely right. And to the point of the person I talked to on Blue Sky, yeah, we still have the rules for circles of terrain. So if you have an older mission where, hey, objectives pop onto the board randomly, or for Maelstrom missions, if you are running around, like maybe you start the objective in like a token in the building, but once you move it out of the building, that becomes the objective rather than the building.
Or like in Armageddon, there's multiple missions where you can do an action to move the objective towards your deployment zone. And I don't think they're moving buildings.
No, they're not. Or there are missions where there are objectives that will be on and then off. And sometimes, depending on how they're laid out, it doesn't make sense to have. I've seen some setups where there's no way to have that many decently sized buildings crammed in close to each other. So at some point, you're just going to have to decide, here's the on and off points. Like, here's where they are. like get it as close as you can. But I think as much as I am a big fan of, hey, the core rules say this, and we should try to stick with the core rules whenever possible, I'm going to say that the rules are more like guidelines anyway. Especially when it comes to that 14.01 on terrain objectives. Make the objectives buildings when you can, maybe have them start in buildings. And from what the people I've talked to, they like buildings being objectives. They do feel that it feels more immersive, that it feels like you are fighting over a physical location, like controlling a place, not just a vague zone, is a better, like, it feels better both gameplay wise and narrative wise. And I do agree with that. But I also like the idea of, for like Maelstrom, the objective, the thing you're trying to steal is in that building, but once you steal it, the building is no longer an objective, because not all buildings are objectives.
Or what about that one time that one little guy with the briefcase was the objective?
Oh yeah, back in like 4th edition, the Battle from Macragge set. Yeah, make that dude in the building, and then you just grab him and run off with him.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So yeah, like terrain and objectives and the line of sight rules people will get more used to. Those will probably get tweaked if there continue to prove to be issues with like toe in, line of sight. People will adjust their terrain collections. Definitely make sure to make use of lighter terrain, because it does make for a more interesting table, and it changes up like movement lanes, because I think if everything is dense terrain, that really hurts vehicle heavy armies, which is another point against transports. If like you can't move the transports through, because some of the terrain is so close together in these layouts that it is very difficult to move a vehicle through.
Just give your Sagittars mobile. Problem solved.
Yeah.
There are like, hey, there are something, or just use that one twist where everything has mobile,
or just have vehicles that have fly.
Yeah, I would say another, like a point that didn't quite make, I think, the top 3, but the way rules are arranged, even though they're all very clearly like delineated and numbered and everything, sometimes where rules are feels weird. Like I understand why they have an advanced section, but having the rules for flying in an advanced section completely separated from all the other movement rules, yeah, feels weird.
Yeah.
And I've had issues trying to find things in the app because things were just not in the places I expected them to be. And I think we need better linking there too.
Yeah, the app, and again, that's something that can be refined with time. They can improve the search indexing of the app. That is all stuff that can be worked through. It is a pain point, but it can get better. I can't promise that it will. I'm not the one making the app, but it could.
I think it will. I have hope.
I mean, they're gonna have better app support over time. Also, I mentioned the site GD Missions. If you go to the website is gdmissions.app. I will also say that if you go to the rules section, which they have all the rules, they have a game tracker in here. They list all the missions, secondaries. They've got a game tracker to show the mission matrix. They have something that I railed about last episode, a change log. They have a change log both for the core rules themselves and for the individual factions. So if you want to find out how your faction has changed, you can look that up as well. And it'll tell you like, hey, this was the date of the update. Here was the data version. Here's what changed on the individual units. Here's how much their points changed by. Here's how their ability text changed. They keep a full update. Is it Games Workshop approved? Absolutely not. Do I care? Not really, because it's so useful.
Yeah.
I looked at it, Rob, and I'm like, it doesn't tell me anything, because it really didn't have much for the Leagues of Votan until the end. It was just points changes, which I can already see. So,
well, yeah, because they haven't had too many rules changes.
I know, which is cool. Go Votan. Oh.
But I do appreciate having this information available, even if it's not an official source. It is, having that sort of changelog is very helpful to be able to go and say like, okay, so what changed in my army so I know what to look for. Like the biggest thing that I noticed is from the update a few days ago, all the flamer weapons in the game went from ballistic skill NA to ballistic skill dash. It's a tiny little kind of insignificant change, but it's interesting to see that they just made that change across the board. But I find that to just having a tool like this to keep track of what's changed with the rules is very handy.
Absolutely.
Games Workshop, like I would love to see something like this worked into the app, just to be able to go like, hey, I want to see the list of all the changes from the last version, or so I can at least, or like a history of all the changes, because this will give you the history of everything over every version of the rules update from the app. So very, very useful. Love seeing this being done.
It does do that, and I'm going to laugh at one of them.
What is that?
Under Votan for like two changes or a couple changes ago, where they actually had changes. Secure position stratagem. It says updated timing condition. No, I look at these. What was updated is they added a period.
I mean,
oh my gosh,
it's still a change.
It is a change. So,
as somebody who works in software, somebody just did like a git compare, and I'm here for it.
Yep.
They diffed it. It's good enough for me.
Yep.
But yeah, I think terrain is something like it is a pain point. These are pain points we can work through. And unlike with hazardous, where like just don't use transports much, I guess, or no, it's going to be a problem. With terrain, we can actually take steps to improve it by both. And I know it sucks like if the answer is buy things, but add more light terrain to your collection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is just be willing, if you're not playing tournament play. And if you're playing tournament play, that's on the tournament organizers to make sure that terrains are set up. And it is kind of on you if you are practicing for a tournament to make sure that you have access to the terrain that matches the map. But if you are just playing casually, if you are playing pickup games and you're not really worried about being an exact, matched play 100% compatible, or especially if you are playing narratively, just be willing to be more loose with your terrain. Try to keep it balanced, but don't worry about it being exact fits. Don't worry about the base sizes being exactly right. Don't worry about the measurements being exactly right. And if you do like having, and if you like being exactly right, try to find a mat that has grid work, whether it's from Lighter, or I'm sure somebody else will put out mats like this. I mean, it seems like such an obvious no-brainer, and the markings on them are really unobtrusive. Like, there's the grid work, but this is not a thing that is unique to 40K. I know people who play Marvel Crisis Protocol. They have had editions of the game where it's like, here's a mat, and it has every possible objective location marked, so that like depending on what mission you draw up for your game, because I think you drop like two different kinds of missions in the game, and it'll say like put these objective tokens here and put these objective tokens there. All of them are pre-marked, so you just go boom, 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 you're done. And I think having setup aids like that are very helpful. And so I don't imagine it's gonna be long before more people follow suit. I'm surprised Frontline hasn't done it already, in all honesty.
Yeah, I did like that that they're not obtrusive on the designs. Like when you're looking at it, at a distance, you don't even really see them unless you're specifically looking for them. So no, I suspect that may be a solution going forward, and you'll start seeing more grid lines or more specific, subtle markings for where terrain goes.
Yeah, I think that will help out quite a bit, and it just helps out with also measuring out deployment zones and things like that, and having those pre-marked. I remember the days when back before it was Frontline Gaming's mats, but when they had mat designs, which I think you've brought this up in the past, Richard, where they had like little pieces of trash or flares that marked where the deployment zones were. There's ways to do it subtly, but for the terrain setup, the grid is just like the easiest thing I've seen. It's like, that is such a wonderful solution. Why hasn't anyone else thought of it? All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a break before we get to our final pain point. And that final pain point, it is a doozy. It's going to be a lot. So we will get back to that. But first of all, I want to take a break for sponsor identification. And if you want to support the show and you aren't a big fan of ads, there are a number of good ways you can support us. First off is our Patreon at patreon.com/preferred enemies. And subscribing to our Patreon gets you access to a number of things. First off, you already have access to all our episodes. We don't put any of our episodes behind a paywall, but you do get access to a ad-free version of the feed, which is exclusive to patrons only. Second, you get access to our Discord, which is where we've formed a community of all the people who help support the show. And we just love hanging out with them. We would love for you to be part of that community and take part in it with us as well. And third, you do get access to any game materials we put together. Right now, I'm waiting for September for the first quarter of updates to kind of settle in and for the game to kind of fully crystallize out of what is effectively an open beta into its finalized version. And then I will be able to update the Urban Conquest update so we can get that material updated from 10th to 11th. As, like, for example, in the original Urban Conquest, you fought over buildings. We can start reintegrating that back into the 11th edition version. You get access to all that, and basically it only costs you $1 a month. You can give more if you want, and we really would appreciate if you can. Like, we'll be very thankful, but it is only $1 a month. But the great thing about $1 a month is it adds up. If enough people put in $1 a month, it really does combine together and help us out. It's helped keep the show going for years, and it still helps us subsidize things beyond what we get from advertiser income. It helps kind of keep us independent. And so we really do appreciate that. So yeah, again, if you want to be a patron, patreon.com/preferred enemies. Second is our merch store. If you go to preferredenemies.com/merch, you can find hats, t-shirts, stickers, mugs, all with various Preferred Enemies logos, characters, etc. I know you got a lot of attention for the Shenanigans 40,000 shirt.
Yes. Yeah, I wore that around day one at GenCon. A lot of people stopped and looked like, wait, what is that? Yeah, so yeah, got some good laughs, including one of the GW people laughed at it. So it's like, all right, cool. I didn't immediately get
took your name down for legal action later, but
I said I didn't immediately get handed a cease and desist, so I will call it a win.
We'll call that a win. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to have any of the material that we've got, check out preferredenemies.com/merch for that store. And then third is our YouTube channel where we post video versions of the audio podcast. So just go there, do the standard, like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell, etc. All the standard YouTube interaction bits to help us get the episode in front of more people through the algorithm. And so, yeah, we'll go ahead and take a break for our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk about our third and final pain point for 11th edition. See you in a bit. And we're back. And that means it's time to continue and finish up our list of the pain points of 11th edition. We've talked about how hazardous has affected things, especially regarding transports. We've talked at length about terrain and the struggles of setting up terrain quickly and what terrain to use and the rules for terrain, etc. And now we're going to talk about the big one. And this is a big one because this was one of the selling points for the edition. One of the big changes that were being applied to change up how missions were put together and how you played and to get your army playing more narratively appropriately, and that is force dispositions. Now, on their face, I don't think the concept of force dispositions is difficult, and I think it's not a complex thing to wrap your head around, so it's not that kind of pain point, but it is how the dispositions have been built, how they are balanced against each other, how they have been distributed to various armies, how they are applied to detachments, how they get changed out of detachments. That has been the biggest issue. And we mentioned last episode that because we talked about the first balanced data slate from the first set of changes for July. And one of the big things that was done was that Purge the Foe was seen by many going into the edition as one of the easiest, best scoring dispositions. Because the idea is you kill enemy, you win game. That's kind of a very...
you need to both kill
it's more than
and
that.
Take and hold. I mean, it felt like traditional 40K, kill enemies, hold points.
Right. and it was relatively easy to splash in because there were a fair number of 1 or 2 point detachments that could be added. So you could make your army purge the foe if you so wanted. And leading up to the edition, through the preview period, a lot of outlets were saying, hey, you should take purge the foe as your disposition if you can. It will give you the best chance to win overall.
And I think that's where the flaw lied in. I've seen this with other game designs. If you give players enough choice, they will math hammer and meta out to like, everyone should do this or you're doing it wrong. And I feel like at the start of this edition, that's what happened with Purge the Foe. And between that and it's the easiest disposition to understand and do other than take and hold, the numbers for people using it skyrocketed.
Oh, yeah. Now, the win rate was not necessarily higher than any other disposition. Even though more people took Purge the Foe, the win rate, like the total number of wins, was only slightly above average. And what people found was that actually priority assets and take and hold, especially priority assets, could be hard counters. Because in most of their missions, a Purge the Foe player has to kill more than their opponent. They have to constantly be killing more. You could hold back a little bit early on and get them to overextend themselves and then kind of do a counter punch, put them on the back foot, and was hard for them to catch up on the scoring. And so smart play plus the way the other dispositions worked even things out. It was actually decently balanced when it came down to it. It's just that people saw it as, well, this is the easy one, so everyone should take that. And that was one of the concerns I had going in, is, oh, this is just going to turn into a bunch of mirror matches, because that right there, I think, is baked into the dispositions and is one of its biggest weaknesses. And that is because you are playing one disposition, and especially the way match play works, you pick your disposition during army building. You cannot change it mid-event. You can't say, like, I took these 2 detachments so I have access to, like, reconnaissance and purge the foe, for example. And I can't say, all right, the matchup here is better for me if I take purge the foe, and then on the next round, well, the matchup is better if I take reconnaissance, so I'm playing a different mission. You can't do that. You are locked in for matched play.
I will agree. I kind of would like to. I know they do it for tracking purposes, because then that way they can get perfect numbers for it. But it would be nice if you had, like, I'll say tokens, and like you and your opponent at the start revealed which disposition you are based on what you could be. That way you could switch it up, and you have more flexibility. But I understand why they're trying to keep it all just one for the numbers.
Right. And remember, that is a rule that is supposed to be only for match play. If you have multiple detachments and thus multiple dispositions available in casual play or narrative play, feel free to pick one of them. You do not have to be locked into one, even though if you are using the official app Army Builder, they do ask you to pick one. Like, they ask you to choose one. So they've the app is leaning more towards supporting matched play.
Funny, because the first week I used the app and it didn't ask me my disposition.
No,
until I got into the game. Mm-hmm. And now it's baked into the Army Builder.
Right. Because again, they're building. The app is focused on match play. It is not focused on casual or narrative play. It is focused on matched, i.e. tournament play. But that is where I think one of the weaknesses of the system is you are stuck playing 5 missions. Now, that seems like, okay, that's less mental load. I don't have to worry about how to play a bunch of different missions like in 10th edition, where it's like, okay, I could either be randomly drawing a mission, or, hey, this event's going to have 5 or 6 different missions that I'm going to have to play. And it could be different than the missions that another event is doing. And I don't have to worry about that. I can just focus on, this is how my army is meant to play. Theoretically, it's very interesting. It's a neat idea. But where I think it starts to fall down is that you are locked into these 5 missions. And depending on what the meta goes towards, and again, not as much of an issue casually, not as much of an issue narratively, But like if I'm playing take and hold, I'm going to be playing one of 5 take and hold missions. And that's great if my pair-ups are completely random and I have no idea of knowing what disposition I'm going to be playing. I could theoretically play 5 different missions all weekend in a 5-round tournament. But that is not how the data is working out, because Dennis, as you said, at a competitive event, people have math hammered out what is the most optimal play for them to make. And what we were seeing before the purge, so Games Workshop said purge the foe is being taken too much. So we need to make it so that you have to specifically make a choice to play a purge the foe army. So we're going to make like all the purge the foe detachments like 3 points, or they can't be combined with anything, or they're very difficult to add in. You have to very explicitly decide to run this disposition. And we're also going to move it around so detachments that had access to it are now something else, because we don't want it in too many places. And the results on the data of what's being played is fascinating. So I want to point out that Tabletop Battles had an article. They every week they cover, hey, here were the results of the big tournaments for over the last week or so. And this was the first batch of data post battle data, like post balanced data slate. And what has been seen is the change week by week in what dispositions people are taking. And yes, there was definitely an overabundance of Purge the Foe in that first week of,
well, it looks like 35%-ish or close to that.
It was over 30%. Was, because like the way they have it broken down is across the whole field, take and hold was around like 26-27%. And then the next jump from 26 to about 62 was Purge the Foe. Then another around 10 to 12% was reconnaissance. Less than 10% was disruption, and about 20% was priority assets. Priority assets was also seen as harder to score than either take and hold or purge the foe. And so the combination of take and hold and purge the foe was 60% of the field, with most of that being purge the foe. Over time, though, before the update, which I think was around week 30, like week 29, you start seeing purge the foe slimming down. Priority assets picks up. This is the game, this is the natural adjustment. And then week 30 and week 31 is when we see the change hit. And by week 31, take and hold has gone up to just about 30%. Priority assets has become 30%. Purge the foe is down to about like 12%. It's around the same amount as people taking reconnaissance, and disruption is still very small. I think disruption has shrunk a little bit, even from early on. It has been this thin little blue ribbon through the chart rather than really doing much.
I'm still not a fan.
And no one is, and that's why like it's seen as the hardest one to score effectively. Like the missions aren't necessarily that much harder to do, like the actions aren't harder to do, but a lot of them are very, I don't want to say they're reactive, but like you have to kind of line up and figure out what is my opponent going to do, because the whole thing of disruption is to mess with your opponent's plans. And a lot of times the units you're taking are not going to be conducive to doing that effectively, because you have to be able to mess with all the different disposition styles. So you have to be able to do a little bit of everything, but not as focused or as well as the other dispositions. But so here's the issue with this. So now we've gone from 60% of the field being purge or take, which meant if you were going into a tournament on week 28, your games were likely going to be against purge or take, with like 1/3 of the time being one of the other three. That means most of the time, 2/3 of the time, you are playing one of two missions. If you yourself are playing purge or take, that also means there's going to be a fair number of mirror matches where you're both just playing the same mission against each other. Now we've basically made purge a far less effective choice. Not because they've changed the missions. The missions are no harder or easier to do than they were before. But what's important is the detachments that are connected to that disposition in many cases is not seen as good or not as flexible because you can't combine it with other pieces. And so now 60% of the field is taken hold and priority assets. So we've just swapped one problem for the other.
And the other problem I see with this, Rob, is the fact that when they brought this out and touted it, they said, hey, your disposition will match your army style.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I've been playing Emperor's Children. Flawless Blades, to me, that's a purge the foe thing, because the way they're built, they're going to go out and go destroy things because they're fast. They've got I'm always going to wound on 3 up. And if I don't kill a model, I'll lose something, but oh well. They've been amazing, and their 1-point disposition that made them better was Purge the Foe. But I think because of that, they're like, oh, well, everyone's just taking Flawless Blades, and they're just putting them inside of whatever other disposition or other detachment to get the Purge the Foe disposition, and they're doing too well. So let's change the Flawless Blades to be Disruption. And I'm thinking, that doesn't make sense. If I was doing Disruption, I'd want to be using my tactical, like the Tormentors and Infiltrators, and doing more things like that rather than having a melee unit that wants to go and hack and slash things. So I feel like they lost some of that thematic stuff when they made a lot of these changes.
Yeah, that has been definitely one of the issues. Is it's gone from playing an army that plays the way that you feel your army should play, and again, this is how it should play, dictated by Games Workshop. And I feel like they were pretty close to on the nose in a lot of cases with the initial drop. And now, suddenly, some of these armies do not feel the same way. And it's not just that some have been taken away from Purge and made other things. They've juggled some things around, so nothing, in their mind, I think, is that nothing is overrepresented. So, for example, Spectacle of Slaughter, the Flawless Blades 1-point detachment, lost Purge the Foe, became Disruption. That's not the only one. Coterie of the Conceited, a detachment whose rule is specifically around the more units you kill, the more points you get to raise your units, to give buffs to your entire army. By definition, that should be a Purge the Foe detachment. That is what that detachment wants to do. That is how that detachment works. It is now a priority assets detachment because apparently killing things is about going around the board and doing actions and controlling key objectives.
The action of killing, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you kill the other opponents, then you can do your actions and hold objectives.
Yeah, we got nothing wrong.
Yeah. But now we've got too many priority asset detachments for Emperor's Children, despite the fact they only have 7, 8 detachments? Not many. So now we've got too many priority assets. So we're going to take Carnival of Excess, which is the Slanesh Demon detachment. We got to change that because that's already priority assets. So we're going to make that Disruption too. Only now we have too many Disruption detachments. So we're going to take Frenzied Host, which is the +1 strength if you advance or fall back with your battle line units, your Emperor's Children battle line units. Okay, great. You know, advancing and falling back is a thing that Emperor's Children is baked into. That was Disruption. We've now made that Reconnaissance.
Yeah, that one actually felt like a Disruption one to me because there's your battle line trying to do stuff.
Right. So now we have all this shifting around, and that just feels very weird. And the thing about changing up the detachment that you're playing from something like Purge the Foe into a Disruption or into a priority assets is now, whereas with Purge the Foe, you want to take overwhelming force. You want to take units that can just slam into something and kill it outright because you need to be killing things every turn. You don't want to be locked in. And you want to minimize trading too, because you need to be killing more of you there, more than they are. So that requires a different unit setup than priority assets or Disruption, because with priority assets or Disruption, you need action monkeys. You need units that are going out and doing action things while also still having some of those pieces for holding objectives or killing things, because depending on what matchup you get into, you're going to have to be doing different things, especially with Disruption. So now the army that you have built out, and you've built the list, and it performs this disposition well, gets changed out from under you. Now, hopefully this will slow down and they will not do this more than once a quarter. But even then, it's like, now I've got to retool my army, not just because points have changed, but now because the needs of my army have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do see that. It's air quote nice that they have that tweak in the toolbox to do, but at the same time, how many times have we seen a balance update come out and we're like, oh, I have to change my list now because all the points changed. And now it's going to be that, but worse, because it's an entire disposition change. And now you might have to change your detachments and then change your units. And it feels a lot more disruptive than just a points change.
Right. Something else I noticed is, like, one of the promises early on was that, hey, every faction will have access to all 5 dispositions. So you should be able to pick the army that plays the missions you want to play. And we were kind of wondering, well, how's that going to work for something like, World Eaters? Because that should be all Purge the Foe, right? No, World Eaters actually has, with only 8 detachments, only 2 of them are Purge the Foe, strangely enough. And the ones that are not, so you've got Berserker Warband is Purge the Foe. It's also a 3-pointer, so it can't be combined with anything else. Brazen Engines, their Demon Engine detachment, is Disruption. That's only a 1-pointer, so easy to splash that in. But why would you want to splash in Disruption, really?
I mean, I'd say for the Disruption one, you're splashing it in because I'm guessing it gives good rules for the Demon Engines and not because of
Probably, yeah. Butchers of Corn is Taken Hold. Cult of Blood, which is the all Jackals, that is priority assets. Okay, that's a lot of action monkeys. That one kind of makes sense. I can see that. Gore Track Onslaught, which is the tanks and transports, that is Taken Hold. Corn Demonkin is Reconnaissance. Okay, you've got like juggernauts in there. You've got stuff that can move around quickly. All right, yeah, okay, that's fine. Possessed Slaughter Band, also Purge the Foe. Okay, that one makes sense. I get it. Vessels of Wrath, priority assets. A 1-pointer you could splash in if you want to take priority assets, which you might want to, considering it's considered a good detachment.
Right.
So it's like there's actually a pretty good spread there. Out of 8 detachments, everything except Disruption and Reconnaissance has 2 options, and Disruption is the one you're least likely to take, and Reconnaissance works, but it's also only a 2-pointer, so you could splash in Taken Hold or priority assets if you wanted to. On the other hand, there's Chaos Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines has 17 detachments. Now, if we saw an equal spread, we should see 2 to 3 Purge, 2 to 3 priority assets, maybe a couple of we should say maybe like 3, 3, 3, if like maybe even like 3, 4, 3, like 2 and 2, something like that. Instead, we have 1 Purge the Foe detachment, and that is Creations of Bile, because reasons.
I mean, famously, Chaos Space Marines aren't like all known for like wanting to kill everything. So that kind of tracks. That tracks to me.
We have 1 Purge the Foe, and it's a 3-pointer, so it can't be combined with anything else. If you want to play Purge the Foe, you are playing Fabius Bile, and you're gonna like it. That is all you get to do. But what if I play Iron Warriors, or I play Night Lords, or I play Alpha Legion, or something else? Well, good news, we've got you covered, because there are 5 priority assets: Chaos Cult, Cult of the Archifane, Devotees of Destruction, Pact-Bound Zealots, Renegade Warband. A couple of those are considered pretty good detachments. So, okay, great. We got priority assets covered. Fellhammer Siege Host, Veterans of the Long War, and Soulforged Warpack are Taken Hold. Okay. Iron Warriors, you're covered by Taken Hold. You're going to play like Taken Hold. All right. Cool. We've got 2 Reconnaissance, Murder Talon Raiders, and Renegade Raiders. These are the ones about moving quickly, deep striking in. Okay, Reconnaissance makes sense. Renegade Raiders is a 3-pointer, so it can't be splashed with anything else. Okay, fine, that's fine, whatever. And then 6 Disruption. Why? 2 of them are for Night Lords, Dread Talons and Nightmare Hunt. Murder Talon Raiders did become Reconnaissance. Murder Talon Raiders had originally been Purge the Foe. So had Soulforged Warpack. It had been Purge the Foe. So now those are those became reconnaissance and taken hold, respectively. So, yes, technically there are all 5 dispositions available, but not really, unless you have an army that is you have a collection that is built to be creations of bile, which really wants you playing Fabius bile. And we see, like, you see this throughout other armies. I think we mentioned it last time when they did this update. Tau got particularly badly hurt. They do not have many good combinations. Retaliation Cadre, which used to be a 2-pointer, is now 3-point, I believe, and that is their one Purge the Foe. Everything else got shuffled around to priority assets, reconnaissance. They've got 1 disruption and 1 taken hold. Their 1 taken hold is Kroot Hunting Pack, and one of our players said, like, yeah, I built a Kroot army. I'm getting tired of playing taken hold. But he doesn't have, there's nothing else that really combines well with it, because while Kroot Hunting Pack is 2 detachment points, he could take an experimental prototype cadre, but that's a battlesuit focused in detachment. He has to splash in battlesuits. He doesn't want to splash in battlesuits. He wants to play Kroot. I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs. You know, it's that kind of thing.
That one, I mean, Tau in general has not made sense to me on which ones they have for which ones, because even Kroot, I would think they should be reconnaissance or disruption, because they're like the front lines going out trying to do stuff. I don't see them holding.
Now, they can be disruption if you take them in the auxiliary cadre, which is a disruption. Also has the auxiliary keyword, so it can't be combined with the Kroot Hunting Pack. So he can't even change that way. The other option he has is splashing in the advanced acquisition cadre to become reconnaissance, but then to get any benefit from that, he has to take stealth suits and pathfinders, which he doesn't want to do. He wants to play Kroot.
That's not the theme. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, by wanting to play into a particular theme, he's stuck in 1 detachment, and his missions will be whatever that detachment will be. And that's it. And I would also point out that in narrative play, like in competitive play, you at least theoretically have a chance of playing 5 missions. We mentioned this in Dominatus when we did Dominatus review last week, that the way the missions are set up, like you choose your sub-faction that you're in, like Raiders, Liberators, or Oppressors. And then when you play, like you can just play your normal mission, but there's no incentive to do that because you want to achieve your agenda. And the only way to achieve your agenda is to play the agenda mission or your faction. And you figure that out by looking at your disposition. And then you will be playing 1 of 2 missions based on your opponent's disposition. There are 2 possible choices among the 5 options. So if you're playing Take and Hold in Dominatus play, you are even playing, you are more likely to be locked into playing the same game every week.
I'm going to say yes and no, because those are also by phase.
They are by phase, but that means for a phase, like depending on how long a phase is, like we're running our phases where it's like 3 games over a month.
Okay.
That means for a month, the odds are he's playing the same mission every week. And like someone asked on Reddit, it's like, I'm tired of playing this mission. Why can I not just play, something else? And people are like, well, you could just change your army, like change what you're playing. It's like, but I want to play a different I'm tired of playing the same. Like, even if I change dispositions, now I'm changing what mission I'm playing, but I'm still going to be playing the same one every time I meet somebody because it's, it's the same set of dispositions I'm playing against. The environment is such that, especially with 2/3 of the field being taken hold of priority assets, it's basically a coin flip. Am I going to be playing the take and hold mission or the priority assets mission? And that may be all I play for weeks because nobody's playing disruption. Maybe I get lucky and somebody's playing reconnaissance. Maybe I get lucky and somebody's playing purge the foe. But if they haven't built an army that uses that, if it doesn't fit their theme, then maybe I just end up playing the same game over and over. And that's worse than when we only had 3 missions to choose from back in the day.
And I feel like that was one of the concerns we had when they made this announcement. It touted more flexibility, but the players themselves are metaing it into, you're only going to do 2 or 3 missions.
Well, and even if you get outside meta, I'm not playing to the meta right now. I'm playing in a narrative league where everybody's got an army that they want to play. Like, this is the army I built. A lot of people don't have the resources. I'm lucky that I have the resources. I can make multiple armies. Not everybody does.
I'll go with this, Rob. You're still playing to the meta. It's not a competitive meta, but you're doing your local narrative meta where people have their factions. This is the meta. This is what I'm going to see. And so, yes, that will get stuck in a rut, which is unfortunate, and that's what we had a concern about.
Yeah, it's like one of my players has said, like, up until now, I've been using the GW app, but I didn't want to pay for having the right to be able to build more than one army. I'll wait for another app to be updated. And so he's like, I've had one army built. And so that's what I've been locked into. And that's what I've been playing. He's like, from now on, I'm going to have 2 or 3 lists built. Cause he does have, like, he plays Necrons. He does have the resources. He has the models available to do multiple list types. And he's like, I'm going to have 2 or 3 lists built so that I can bring my stuff and we can discuss before the game. It's like, okay, so what disposition you're playing? Would you like to play against this, or this?
I think that's a good way to do it, and I'll applaud that because I was even looking at that for Votan. We're going to be doing 1,000-point games here, and I've got 3 lists. One's Purge, one's Priority Assets, and one's Take and Hold. But they all have the same core. It's just a little bit of different. And I can probably pack up all 3 armies into like 1 or 2 KR cases. So yeah, I like that idea.
But that's a hard sell to make to some people because not everybody's got that.
Especially a new player.
Especially a new player. The people who you were trying to get in with this edition, right? Like, theoretically, the ones you're trying to get in at the start of any edition is you're trying to make this attractive to new players. And that's rough when the answer is, yeah, you're just gonna be playing, whether it's a tournament meta or the play group, and these are the armies that everybody has. It's like, you're going to be locked into playing, if you are using the force dispositions, you are going to be locked into playing the same game over and over again. There's also the issue that not all detachments are built equally. We know this, like, not all detachments are equally good. Even if they could all be two detachment point detachments, that would not make them equal.
Mm-hmm.
And you may want to play maybe you're not locked in like, hey, I built a Kroot army. That Kroot is what I want to play. But maybe you built a more well-rounded army because, you like, I just collect stuff and I just want to have a lot of options. You're still limited to what detachment are you going to take? Like, right now, I am playing Priority Assets because the army I built before Force Dispositions became a thing was my Cult of Vashtor army, which was Vashtor, Demon Engines, Cultists, and Obliterators. Now, fortunately, I have detachments I can take for that. There's Cult of the Archivane, which is what I've been taking, and Devotees of Destruction, which is the Obliterators and Havocs detachment. Those are both Priority Assets. I'm playing Priority Assets. Now, if I want to play Disruption, I've got, I don't know why I'd want to, but maybe I want to mix things up a little bit. I could get rid of Devotees of Destruction. I could take, for one point to splash in, because Cult of the Archivane is a 2, I could splash in Cabal of Chaos. But I don't have any Psychers in the army outside of like the one Mind Witch in the, who's not a character in Dark Commune for my cultists. Like, well, I could take that, but I don't gain anything from that detachment. Yeah, if I want to take Murder Talon Raiders and splash in to become Reconnaissance, well, now I got to take Raptors and Warp Talons. I have some of the models for that, but not a lot. I can't tool my list, and Cult of the Archivane has been fine. Priority Assets has been fine. I could make it Soulforged Warpack if I want, since I am using a bunch of Demon Engines, and then I would have access to Take and Hold if I want to play Take and Hold. But if I want to play something else, I either have to take a detachment that does not work with my army, or I have to take one that is less useful. And honestly, Cult of the Archivane is not the most useful detachment, because the detachment rule is all your vehicles have 5-up invulnerables. Well, they already have 5-up invulnerables because they're all Demon Engines. So it's like, yeah, this one doesn't really do much for me, but I like it thematically. But yeah, it's the idea of dispositions has been good. The implementation has been questionable, And what I feel is a knee-jerk reaction to, oh no, everyone's taking Purge, has also been handled badly. I think it has had really bad side effects.
Yeah, this one, you're right, just feels like a big knee-jerk reaction. And unfortunately, we've seen these before, like when Sisters Bringers of Flame was strong.
Yep.
Knee-jerk reaction. They just put it to where nobody played it. So it feels like they're trying to do the same thing with Purge. And I know that's not what they want to do, but sometimes their knee-jerk reactions are just way too strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is another one of those things where this is hard to play around, because if you are playing in a format where the missions are dictated by your disposition, i.e. officially sanctioned, like any sort of match play, or if you're using like the official Dominatus and narrative stuff, you're kind of stuck. I mean, you can try to build your army around it. Some armies have a slightly better time than others because the detachments may not be as locked into particular units or keywords as others. I think, honestly, Emperor's Children have one of the best times because they have so few units. So much of their stuff is like, with the exception of like Spectacle of Slaughter, I don't think their stuff is locked in as much to a particular keyword outside of maybe Battle Line. But if you're something like, again, Chaos Space Marines or Tau, where everything is very tied to either particular unit keywords, or you just have detachments that nobody really wants to take, like Kauyon. Nobody really wants to take Kauyon because it doesn't do anything for 3 turns. You're either going to have to wait for Games Workshop to adjust things again, and maybe we get a patch in a couple of weeks from recording time and they adjust some of these again, in which case you just adjusted your army to fit whatever the new one was, and now they're changing it. That's not great either. That's why I'm hoping that slows down and they won't use this that often. It is a lever they can use to balance the game, but man, they need to be real sparing in how they use this. And that still doesn't address the problem of primary mission lock. Like, you're going to be playing the same couple of primary missions depending on what your meta is, whether it's tournament or otherwise.
And I hate saying it this way, Rob, but I think they view that as a feature, not a bug.
You're probably right.
Because, hey, you only have to prepare for 5 missions. Oh, wait, we mean 2 to 3. Mm. So there is less mental load, but yeah, people will get bored.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest concern, is that people will get bored, and secondaries are not enough to beat the boredom. Secondaries, I think they're not bad, but they're still a little on the swingy side. You can lose a game just because of a bad draw, or your opponent just gets a better draw than you.
Well,
and yes, it's a game with dice. It's a game with randomness.
I was going to say, you can also hold those now, which I found is...
It is better. It is better, but you could still just draw a handful of, I don't have, like, these are harder to score. My opponent got a better draw and is ahead on points. Like, that is just the nature of it. On the one hand, at least from a narrative standpoint, there's nothing saying you have to use the forced dispositions. You can make up your own missions, or, hey, we're going to use the twist where it's just a randomized mission. Like, where's that? There's one twist where it's
play with your opponent's disposition.
Well, there's the one where it's your opponent's disposition,
which is fine unless it's a mirror match. Oh.
Right. Well,
right.
Or there's one called, there's scrambled communications where you trade missions. That one's kind of interesting, but again, if you're in a mirror match, that doesn't do anything. There's also Mirrored World, where rather than playing your normal primaries, you roll a d6 and it tells you which one you're going to play of the 5 mirror match missions.
I'm going to say something weird. This is the first time I think twists has sounded interesting.
And I would say most of the twists are not as good. Like, obviously, like I've mentioned RuneScape before, where everybody gets mobile. That's a bad twist. That is bad for the game. Bad things happen when everybody has mobile.
Yeah.
But that twist for like Mirrored World, where it's like, I could honestly see an event just saying, all right, round 1, we're playing the mirror match for Purge. Round 2, we're playing the mirror match for Disruption. Round 3, we're playing the mirror match for Take and Hold.
I mean, that would be an interesting way to try things.
Right, because like you'd still have to have an army that can do a variety of things, but it would get rid of the onus of, well, you have to be this army to get the kinds of missions you want to play. And you also would be guaranteed to not be playing the same mission multiple rounds. It feels weird to say that might be the fix, is just to say, yeah, we're going to kind of ignore dispositions.
And I think the key phrase you said there is play a different mission each round. Because that's what people used to do, is there were a bunch of missions, you always played a different mission. So maybe we'll get to a thing where they don't get rid of these missions, per se, but maybe when the next chapter approved comes out, they just add more. So if you have your, like if I'm Purge and you're taking hold, now there's 2 Purge and take the holds, and you roll off or you decide which one. That would be an interesting take.
That would be interesting. I think the other fix, if they didn't want to do that, but like, I think if an event wanted to just basically say this twist is in play and we're going to handle the roll for you, it's like, it's going to be this, and this, and you could even mix up the deployment maps. Okay, so we're doing Meat Grinder, which is the Purge on Purge mission. We're going to do that round 1. It's going to use deployment map A. Then we're going to do Disruption versus Disruption. That one's going to be deployment map C. You could change it out or just do A's and then C's. So you're playing on similar boards, but you're always playing different missions. It feels weird to say, but that would be the fix to this is a balance issue. We're just going to ignore it. We're just going to ignore it. We're going to say everybody is playing this disposition. Everybody is playing this disposition. The only other fix I could see that still uses disposition is if Games Workshop rolls back you are locked in at army building level to your disposition, and allow you to be like, I'm building my army out of these 2 so I can choose. That would be the other fix. That one they could do very easily, because they just have to update the tournament packet and the app. That one doesn't require a core rules change. Doesn't require anybody to ignore anything. They could do that right now. In the meantime, you could just ignore the dispositions. I'm also curious to see how dispositions are going to affect, for making my own missions for narrative play or for adapting old missions. One of the things that I've been kind of hesitant on doing that with is, like, I kind of want to have the dispositions in play. I kind of want to do something with them, but I don't know how to work those into individual missions. And I don't necessarily want to do a whole matrix of missions that are different for dispositions. And ignoring it might be the best way to work around that. The thing with ignoring it, though, is it requires buy-in from your players. It requires players to want to be interested in doing that. I could see small RTTs doing it, little 3-round events doing we're just going to ignore disposition and these are the missions you're going to play. It would be much harder, even though it would be more impactful for a large event to do it. It's going to be a much harder buy-in, because the minute you deviate from what is standard, especially for matched play, you get a lot of pushback from the player base. I speak from experience.
Yeah.
Like, if you try to adjust point levels because you're like, 1850 doesn't feel right, or we're going to play 1750. No, you're playing 1850. Or we're going to play 1850 instead of 2000. No, I don't want to play that. I want to play 2000 because that's what I'm used to. That's what I'm going to play at all the other events. I want to focus on the same skill set, the same army list. I don't want to change that.
And
I want to play 1999 plus 1.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And some people like that consistency.
They do.
They like knowing the missions. I mean, and so for them, this feature is not a bug. They're like, oh, I know which exactly 2 to 3 missions I'm going to play all the time. I can prep for that, and then I'll get really good at those 2 to 3 missions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, like you said, that is a feature, not a bug. I agree with you there. I think that is the intent. I argue how good that is for people who are not highly competitive players.
Yeah, and this is where we get back to is this edition really merging competitive and narrative into one set? Because I feel like it's trying, but it's not there.
I think it is trying to make matched/competitive play feel more narrative. I think it is trying to make it feel more flavorful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how well that is passing the other way. I don't know if the side effects from that transfer as neatly over to casual play, because it does kind of lock casual play into competitive thinking. And answer any arguments before anybody gets in the comments or sends us anything. yes, you are always trying to win the game when you play. You are trying to achieve your objective. You are trying to get the most victory points. Even in narrative play, this is still true.
Mm-hmm.
But there's again, as I said earlier, there's a different mindset and a different set of needs and gameplay pressures from tournament competitive play than in narrative play. What you are trying to accomplish to satisfy the needs of the players is different. And I think that it is easier to layer flavor onto a competitive set because the rules can feel flavorful, but you can also kind of just disregard the actual narrative flavor aspect and just acknowledge that those are the mechanical rules. These are the new mechanics. If you're going from trying to apply narrative elements to competitive play, than it is to try to apply the pressures and requirements of competitive play to a narrative environment. I don't think that I think we are seeing that doesn't pass quite as neatly over.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's fair. But I also think that narrative players and narrative events are so like practiced or like used to kind of modifying things and coming up with their own, making changes and coming up with their own stuff anyway, that I don't know that ethos is really going to change that much. Like, because I've been, kicking around the back of my mind, like, how do we run our narrative event at Midwest Conquest next year? With given the framework of terrain and footprints and, and dispositions and things like that. And yeah, like, as we kind of go through this conversation, some of this is like, yeah, maybe we just chuck that and like don't worry about that, and we use our own fixed layouts or something. And I think that narratively that's a much easier sell. You come into an event and you say, hey, ignore dispositions. You communicate it ahead, but ignore dispositions, we're going to play this, or ignore or you can select your disposition between each battle round, or ignore terrain as objectives, and we're going to use objective markers. I definitely think it's easier to do with the narrative. It does not go the other way. It doesn't go, you get a lot more pushback if you go to a competitive event and say, hey, this competitive event is going to do X, Y, Z. We're going to change these rules. That's it. Having the default be more narrative style is better, I think, in that regard, because I think the switch or like the change on the narrative side to like make it less competitive or, less comparative focused, I think that's an easier sell than the other way around, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. It is absolutely an easier sell. Yeah, and that's why I was saying like event buy-in would be the really hard sell. If you wanted to do something like, hey, we're going to ignore disposition, it would take an event on the scale of maybe an Adepticon, a Nova, an LVO, or even like a Lone Star Open or something like that, like something that's still large, but maybe not the biggest. It would take somebody like that saying, hey, we've been looking at the numbers, we've been crunching the data, and we feel like the experience that players are getting is not leading to a really even field the way we would perceive it. So we're going to ignore dispositions and just tell everybody play one of the 5 mirror match missions, and you're going to be playing a different one every round, and so you have to be ready. You would still have the benefit of you'd only have to know 5 missions. You'd have to build your army to play those 5 missions, but it would take an event of that scale doing that buy-in to not be so heavily impacted by player pushback. Like an event that big can kind of make those demands. But I don't think a smaller event would be as successful doing that, because there's enough events, people have choice. They'll just go to one that fits what they want more. Yeah, I think this is something that could definitely be addressed like for casual players much more easily than it can be for competitive players. And competitive players will, I think, also see this as a challenge, but they also, from the standpoint of what I'm seeing, they also don't see it as healthy for the game. This is the quote I want to read. This is from tabletopbattles.com, 40K Innovations in 11th Rolling Need, Part 1. This weekend's events represent the first weekend of games following the July 2026 balance update, and who boy did that one do a number on the competitive landscape. It feels like Purge the Foe disappeared overnight as an option, as it's no longer really attached to any good detachments, and they removed it from almost every 1-point detachment in the game. What we're left with is a weekend in which there were 0 winning lists running either Purge the Foe or Disruption. This feels like a bad sign. We've gone from having 4 viable dispositions to 3. I personally played the Take and Hold mirror match in all 3 of my day 1 games of the Lone Star Open. This is from the writer. Looking at the data from the competitive events over the past 4 weeks shows off this particular trend, namely that players have accurately figured out Disruption just kind of sucks. And now that Purge is really hard to get in a good list, that disposition now makes up about 1/6 of the field, while Take and Hold priority assets lists now make up more than 60%, each accounting for about 31% of the field. This ultimately highlights the problems of the July balance update and ultimately the detachment disposition system as it currently stands. Dispositions are strongly tied to the strength of the detachments they're paired with. Players aren't going to take a bad detachment for a good disposition, but they can play around a mediocre disposition if the detachment is strong, as long as it's not Disruption, it seems. So, this means that making Purge unavailable to good detachments means that it's just not an option for most of the game's armies when played competitively. Rather than Purge being fixed, it's just not showing up now, and the result is that players get in a lot of mirror matches with Take and Hold or priority assets. So, even from a competitive standpoint, I would normally say competitive players will just roll with this, and they kind of are, but they're also recognizing this is not healthy. This is not this is not working as intended.
Yeah.
If that pressure continues, if we continue to see that players are just going to get stuck in the same mirror matches every game, that will get mentally tiring even for hardcore competitive players. Like, that will reach a point where I don't know if it's necessarily people will move on to other games, but it may make them less likely to, why would I spend the money to go to a competitive event when I know I'm just going to play the same 2 missions all weekend? Like, that will, or the army I want to take, I have to kind of play a set of missions I don't really like, but it's the only detachment that will actually perform. Those are not good options. So something will have to give. We'll see what happens over the next couple of months as the meta kind of gets locked in. I do want to say I think Games Workshop needs to have a lighter hand on the wheel as far as deciding what the meta should be. I feel like there's one thing about maintaining balance to make sure that, like, oh, hey, this is running roughshod, or this is not working, like, this unit combination is not working the way we intended, or oops, this was a typo, we missed this. Like, those kinds of balance updates. Or, hey, this army rule that we wrote, it just doesn't work, and this army is way underperforming. We need to get them back up. They've always been pretty good at trying to make sure the meta's about, everybody's within a sweet spot, so everybody's got a good chance to win. But I feel like with this knee-jerk reaction and changing around which detachments have what dispositions, they're really starting to move into, no, we want you to play these missions. We want your army to play like this. And that kind of is rubbing some people the wrong way. I kind of bristle at it myself.
Yeah, that's fair.
We'll see what happens. I think in a couple of weeks, we might see some course correction on this. But when even your competitive players are saying, yeah, this isn't working. This is not working. This is not doing what it's supposed to do. And I'm pointing out, rather than fixing something, you just made it not viable. And we've seen, like you pointed out, Dennis, we've seen them do that before with individual armies and individual detachments. Now you're doing it with like an entire swath of detachments. So yeah, it's not ideal. And unfortunately, the only way to win is not to play, i.e. ignore dispositions, which is easier said than done in competitive play. But it is more incentive for me to look at, possibly checking the things for narrative play and just, or working in like smaller bonuses into narrative play. Like, you still pick a disposition, but maybe it just gives one side a particular bonus or other, but against other matchups, maybe it gives you a penalty. Kind of like the matrices they had with stances in Pariah Nexus, maybe not quite to the level of determining your mission the way it does in Maelstrom, because that is just the same issue over again. But yeah, I think it is something that can be workable at the casual and narrative level, but Games Workshop will have to address it at the competitive level. I think the easiest fix is to allow people to choose their disposition from all their options, and to open up a few more options for Purge again. And also to make, okay, this is getting an increasingly long list, and also make Disruption not suck. Good luck on that one.
But if you do all of those things,
the game's golden. I think we've fixed the glitch. But yeah, I think those are the three biggest pain points. And yeah, this last one, dispositions, it's so core to how they've approached the game, and it is a big pain point, and we're seeing it at multiple levels. But yeah, those are the three pain points. Let us know. I'd be curious, feel free to comment or contact us. You can find our email on the website. It's at preferredenemies.com. In fact, our email is ourfirstnames@preferredenemies.com. That is one word, because we do also have emails individually for all of us, but if you want to send it to all of us, it's just ourfirstnames@preferredenemies.com. But yeah, I would love to hear people's thoughts on, especially like terrain, somewhat, terrain definitely, forced disposition definitely want to hear what people think about that. But yeah, that wraps up our talk of pain points in 11th edition. We will be back in a couple of weeks. Who knows? We might actually have some news on orcs by then. As far as pre-orders next week, it's Age of Sigmar ogres are coming. So no sign of orcs yet, but hopefully they are on the horizon soon. But hey, in a couple of weeks, maybe we'll find out more. But until then, from all of us here at Preferred Enemies, I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin,
Dennis,
and Richard.
Good night, good gaming, and yeah, we can work through this pain and make this system work.